Okay, More Perfect Vision had a real good video on Puerto Rico and the big tax advantages that a lot of people are taking advantage of that are U.S. residents and U.S. citizens. But what's happening is a lot of liberals are hitting on this, and what started around 2012, I think is going to probably be ending sometime in the next. I don't think it's going to last another 12 years. And the IRS now is going back on a lot of these people, and I think they're going to invalidate a lot of people that actually have taken advantage of this program because they didn't go by inch on what the program requires to get the tax benefits. Also, folks, we don't monetize this channel. If you can do us a big favor and hit the subscribe button right on your screen and give us a thumbs up, it will help us in getting a better algorithm on this channel. If you can do that for us, I appreciate it. Here's the video.
America. There are many communities where the haves and the have-nots are living right next to each other, from San Francisco to New York and all across rural America. But the starkest inequality is actually here in Puerto Rico, an island known for its beautiful beaches, its tropical weather, and also for a shocking 43% poverty rate. This poverty exists side by side with some of the most extreme wealth in the whole world. Since 2012, more than 5,000 crypto traders, real estate developers, and other wealthy Americans have moved to the island.
I'm moving to Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico is a place that's near and dear to my heart because it's where my family's from. It's where I lived as a kid and have some of my earliest memories. Yep, that's me in the red and white bikini. So I wanted to find out, how did the gap between rich and poor on this beautiful island become so wide? And this video took me down a journey to a much larger question that affects all of us. What happens when a government surrenders itself entirely to the 1%? To answer that question, I'll talk to local residents, investigative journalists, lawmakers, and activists who've been digging into this issue for years. This is the classroom for More Perfect Union. And today, we're talking about how America's elites are plundering Puerto Rico. Before we get to these guys...
I'm moving to Puerto Rico.
We decided to come to Puerto Rico.
I live in Puerto Rico, and I haven't been wearing closed-toed shoes since Thanksgiving.
We have to go back and give you a brief history of Puerto Rico's financial relationship with the mainland. For a large part of Puerto Rico's history, the economy was agricultural, relying on rich sugar plantations, which were exploited first by Spanish colonists and later by American bankers. Then in the mid-1940s, the local government wanted to modernize, so they used tax incentives to attract investment from industries in mainland America. In 1976, the American government passed Section 936, which exempted U.S. companies operating in Puerto Rico from paying federal income tax. This led to a sort of economic dependence on the mainland that proved catastrophic in 1996 when the U.S. government decided to phase out Section 936 over a 10-year period. Without the generous tax breaks, foreign investment began to flee the island. By 2006, a recession hit that's still going on today. In order to make up for the losses and provide citizens with basic necessities, the Puerto Rican government borrowed heavily, racking up $72 billion in debt. Puerto Rico couldn't file for bankruptcy because, as a U.S. territory, it doesn't have the same insolvency laws as states do. So in 2016, the Obama administration passed a law called Promesa, appointing a widely hated Financial Oversight Management Board to determine ways the island can pay back the debt, imposing severe austerity measures, which have seriously pissed people off and hurt locals. As a journalist, I've worked on many stories on the island, and over the last decade, I saw several different crises compound. A recession, followed by a debt crisis, a natural disaster, severe austerity measures, another natural disaster, and all of this left the island reeling, in debt, and in need of economic stimulus. This set the stage for one of the most short-sighted efforts the local government has taken yet to attract money from the mainland. In 2012, conservative Governor Luis Fortuño's administration passed two laws, Act 20 and Act 22. These laws offered massive tax breaks to private investors. In 2019, they were rolled into one law called Act 60. Under Act 60, certain companies pay a 4% corporate tax rate, and they don't pay any taxes on income from capital gains, interest, or dividends. That's why these guys are moving here.
I moved to Puerto Rico first and foremost for the huge tax incentives.
Any money you make from investing is going to be taxed at a big fat zero.
It's one vertical.
Yeah.
It's one. It's a big one.
It's 96% of a big one, which ironically is the same amount of money you keep every year if you move to Puerto Rico.
To qualify, you have to buy a home and donate money to a local charity. And most importantly, you have to move to Puerto Rico and actually live there at least 6 months out of the year.
We live in California.
We lived in California.
Lived. Well, we still do.
No, we lived in California.
We lived in California.
So how has this influx of rich Americans affected the island? Margarita Gandia is a longtime resident and real estate agent in Old San Juan, which is one of the most impacted neighborhoods.
Well, we don't have a neighborhood anymore. The only thing you'll find is gates with a lot of locks.
Many Act 60 beneficiaries have been buying up properties and turning them into short-term rentals, and they're doing it so aggressively that they've completely transformed the housing market.
Un apartamento de renta de 2 habitaciones amueblado con su balcón, buena localización, por lo menos va a ser $4,500 o $5,000 mensuales.
These are Manhattan prices. The median income in Puerto Rico is less than $22,000 a year for an entire family.
Y aquí hay gente que pueden pagar rentas corporativas.
Que todo era en Section 8.
Es ahora mismo
¿Quién lo compró?
es una corporación, un LLC.
Y que esta gente la van a desplazar.
Los mudan a otro edificio de Section 8 fuera del viejo San Juan. Como agarrar una plantita, levantarla, se quedan las raíces aquí y tratar de moverlas a otro lado, ¿no?
And it's not just housing that Act 60 investors are buying up. They're snatching up other public buildings too, and they're getting a massive discount. I went to the neighborhood of Puerta de Tierra with Adrian Gonzalez Costa. He's a spokesperson for Puerto Rico's Independence Party and a vocal critic of the tax incentives.
The school that was closed in 2013 was sold to another Act 22 investor for short-term rental. It's a 3-story building, and it was sold for $500,000. This is prime real estate here. It was sold on 2018, but they haven't done anything.
There's books in there, a desk there that looks like that was maybe the teacher's desk.
It's full of trash. So the myth that they are buying empty buildings and improving them, it's a myth.
It's just garbage outside.
There is a building next to the school, and the most cheap apartment there is near the $1 million. So a whole school, $500,000, and across the street, an apartment for $1 million. It was a gift. It's like a donation for the investor.
So what was the logic here? How was luring rich people in with massive tax breaks supposed to help the people of Puerto Rico?
Influx of capital and jobs. These are type A individuals. They don't sit around watching TV all day. They want to go out and they're investing in the local economy.
So how is that going? Luis Valentin Ortiz is a journalist with the Centro de Periodismo Investigativo, a nonprofit media organization that conducted an investigation into Act 60 and its predecessor, Act 22.
Back in 2021, we started to receive a lot of tips and complaints about individuals who had tax incentives. So we came up with a database on all of the people who has this incentive, and we decided to take a closer look into them and see, do they have a company? Are they creating jobs?
What kind of jobs have these tax beneficiaries created?
Mostly related to themselves. For example, a chauffeur, somebody who cleans the house, a nana that will take care of the kids. We actually spoke to one of them, and their stories were horrible as well because they were mistreated. They were not paid well.
And the jobs weren't just poorly paid. There weren't very many of them.
The last study by the government showed Act 22 only created 40,000 jobs. The average income of those was in the range of $19,000 yearly.
$19,000 a year.
Yeah.
Which is below the poverty line.
Of course, yes.
If you talk to the government, they'll come back and say, just because they're here, we're winning. Just because he goes and spends 20, 30, whatever in a restaurant, we're winning. But that's, if you talk to some economists, they would say that that's a horrible way to see the whole thing.
It's a horrible way to see it because it doesn't account for all the costs that these tax breaks are imposing on the island. Act 60 beneficiaries are encroaching on public space, too. We spoke with Representative Alexandra OcasioCortez, a longtime advocate of Puerto Rican issues.
One reason I'm very passionate about issues regarding Puerto Rico is because my family's from Puerto Rico. I grew up around Puerto Rico, and my family's still there. and seeing the degree of inequality on the island and the way that people in Puerto Rico have been starved of their public resources, all because the wealthy are free riding on public systems and not paying into them, is something that is just so incredibly unacceptable. Puerto Rico has a very sacred principle that is enshrined in law that all beaches are public land. But a lot of these speculators and developers are starting to cut off and create choke points so that native people and the everyday people that come to the island cannot access one of our most precious natural resources, which is our beaches.
This is the Dorado Beach Plantation, and we're going to see if we can go to the beach. Hola, buenos días. ¿Desde aquí se puede llegar a la playa? No. Esto es un club. No beach. No beach. This is Pedro Cardona Roig, an urban planner who has become famous on the island for criticizing policies like Act 22.
Construyen verjas, piscinas y cosas dentro del dominio público, en parte algunos porque no conocen el concepto de la forma que está articulado en Puerto Rico, aunque existe en Estados Unidos, pero como Puerto Rico se ve como un lugar sin orden, todo es posible.
So I'm in this area called Quebradilla, which is on the western side of Puerto Rico. A local activist was just posting from this site, alerting people of construction that appears to be taking place here. It looks like they're starting to clear the land for construction. This is actually an archeological site, and it's illegal to build on top of these areas.
Puerto Rico, al no tener reglas, ha sido un imán para atraer a inversionistas que son inversionistas de gran riesgo, inversionistas que están vinculados a negocios que no son legales.
You might be asking yourself, where has the government been? And this is the question Luis's investigation was asking back in 2021.
We asked the government, hey, how many times have you found non-compliance from these guys? How many reports have they submitted? Can you give us those reports? And that's when the whole thing started to crack open, because they basically one day said, hey, look, we don't have any information on our side. They did not oversee or they did not audit at all. None of these guys.
It's like America Light. The government is totally broke, but this works in your favor because they can't pay people to keep an eye on you.
Is this cool or what?
What makes things even worse is that many of these tax breaks don't apply to local Puerto Ricans themselves.
Una persona beneficiaria de Ley 60 tributa al 3% ahora, pero los que llegaron antes tributan a 0. Así que nosotros competimos tributando entre el 33 y el 36%, que es a lo que yo tributo. Compito con personas que están al 0 y al 3.
This unequal treatment makes it even harder for Puerto Ricans to work their way out of poverty. It's as if the island and its resources are only there to serve rich Americans. And it's at the heart of what many locals are angry about.
Here goes Brock Pierce! He's a crypto colonizer! He's displacing Puerto Ricans every single day!
They're settling, displacing, and owning. Not the old way of colonizing, but the result is the same.
This is Rosa Seguí Cordero, who's part of a new political party focused on advocating for decolonization and building an economy that works for everyone.
The problem is that doing one thing, like allegedly bringing foreign capital, it's not an integrated economic development plan. It does not translate to adequate jobs, nor better paying jobs, nor economic growth. To the contrary, more than $25 billion are not taken into our economy from foreign companies because of these tax breaks. And the government is continuously saying that they need more revenues, that it's in a bankruptcy proceeding.
Driving around the island, you can see broken infrastructure everywhere. Another light that's not... These are major streets. There's a lot of potholes. If Act 60 investors are bringing in money, why aren't these things being fixed?
Because that money that they're bringing never reaches the government coffers. They'll consume, they still use streets, services, public safety. So they exert some pressure on the government, but they don't give back proportionally as much as Puerto Rico taxpayers will pay, the government.
We all pay high taxes.
Yes, we do pay high taxes here in Puerto Rico.
Again, that's 33% for Luis, but only 3% for these guys.
I like it.
With a struggling economy and public policies like these, it's no wonder that 500,000 local residents left Puerto Rico between 2010 and 2020.
It's ironic and very contradictory that when you have that rate of people running away from the island because the lack of opportunities in terms of employment, access to health services, access to good education, there is a law that is inviting rich people from other jurisdictions or other countries to move to the island and take advantage of the empty houses, the empty schools, and of that lack of services that we Puerto Ricans are receiving.
We started this whole video by asking, what happens when a government gives itself over to the 1%?
Nosotros tenemos un aparato gubernamental que ha abandonado lo que es la defensa y el análisis del interés público. Es una mentalidad neoliberal, pero a un nivel muy exagerado. Y está creando un urbanismo neoliberal que no lo habíamos visto antes. Si tú no puedes pagar por los accesos, tú no puedes disfrutar de ellos.
But what can be done about any of this? 4 Democratic members of the House, including Representative OcasioCortez, called on the Government Accountability Office to review Act 60.
In order to legally not pay these taxes, especially federal taxes, you have to reside in Puerto Rico. And so what we're seeing is the potential of people with huge amounts of money, from crypto billionaires to real estate speculators, who are claiming to actually reside in Puerto Rico when in reality they may not. And that might mean that they are skirting out from paying huge amounts of taxes based on false claims. And that should matter not just to people on the island of Puerto Rico, but it should also matter to everyday Americans, because when it comes to federal taxes and any of that revenue, those are our healthcare, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and more.
In July, the IRS identified 100 wealthy individuals who may have been claiming the tax benefits without meeting requirements. They're going to be investigating many of them, and the local government is now helping. This could be a turning point where the federal government could reverse course and make a positive change on a relationship that was founded on exploitation. But there's still a lot more to be done.
One type of economic growth in Puerto Rico, which can be held by data, is that once they approved the law in 2021 to increase the minimum salary, then we felt it. Because a lot, like 85% of the revenues in Puerto Rico come from payroll taxes.
Some think statehood would give them more power over federal policy that affects them, while others are so sick of the decades of wealth extraction from corporate America that they want a clean break to forge their own path independently. Whatever future lies ahead for Puerto Ricans, there are important lessons all of us can learn from their past.
This idea that we hear over and over again, that just the mere existence of billionaires in a place is somehow going to revitalize an economy, has been proven false over and over and over again. It is actually when more people are doing better, instead of one person or a handful of people extracting all of the wealth, that we actually see a revitalization of the finances necessary to have proper schools, proper healthcare systems. And what Puerto Rico needs right now more than ever are people who actually care about Puerto Rico. And we can incentivize that in our tax system, our laws, and our environmental protections as well.
Thanks for watching The Classroom.
Folks, this is not going to get your taxes to zero, even if they keep this tax status the way it is in Puerto Rico. You still got a 4% corporate tax, and then the brackets, there is a certain amount you have to pay yourself a salary depending on what you actually make in the company, but the brackets are as high as 30-something percentile. Then you got the charitable contribution, and you still have to pay for FICA. But my prediction is the Act 60 will be abolished. I think Puerto Rico will become a state of the U.S. If they do, then Puerto Rico could have one of the highest taxes in the U.S. because Puerto Rico, remember, has brackets as high as 30-something percent that you have to pay out yourself in a salary. Then you got the federal tax in the U.S. So if if Puerto Rico keeps its tax the way it is and it becomes a state, and then you got the federal tax, you would have taxes higher than California. But again, as I mentioned to you before, I think this tax break is going to be closed down, and a lot of liberals in Puerto Rico want Puerto Rico to become a state of the U.S. If it does, this whole thing will just be torn apart. Remember, this was started around 2012. I don't think it's going to last another 5 to 10 years at the most. If you really want to get your taxes to zero, and the basic way to do it is to get a second passport and live in a country where you don't have any income tax, no state, federal income tax, no capital gains tax, and be out of your U.S. taxation totally by relinquishing your U.S. citizenship. That's the only way to legally do it. Then you're not subject to whether Puerto Rico becomes a state or not. And you see all this complaining that the liberals are having with this program. It's going to be a constant thing. And also, if Kamala Harris gets elected, I think she's going to put a top priority, because she's a big socialist, in closing down this program. And I think they can close it down because they can actually make this become a state, Puerto Rico become a state. If you want to know more on this and how to get your income taxes to zero, go to our website, www.citizenshipquickly.com, and just ask for some help. And we don't monetize this channel. It would help us a lot if you hit the subscribe button on the right of your screen. You get new videos automatically as they come out. And do give us a thumbs up if you like the video. And that will help us in getting our algorithm up higher and getting these videos out to more people. And I look forward to talking to you on the next video. Take care.